Cannot break free from this prison. Your shadow always comes to see me. And because of that, let's talk about the shadow of translation. Translation is not just a simple rendering of text, a mere change between two languages from its source to the target one. It is far more than that. It goes beyond the transformation of words, and the entire process demands for a deeper understanding of the content, a wider perspective of the context, a different ache for creativity, and a little tweak of freedom while still upholding the principles of it. So, the selected text that I will be discussing required careful considerations of the different principles. At first, I was really having a hard time finding out the essence of the right words to place, as it already sounds good on my initial drafts. However, upon writing my revisions, I thought of the strategy to balance the literal accuracy with functional and dynamic equivalence, which means going for a sense-for-sense technique over the word-for-word translation. And by doing so, I was assured that the meaning and the emotional value of the source text were preserved, while making the translation still understandable and true from the original material. Today, I will be presenting my translation process, focusing on three important principles. First, fidelity to content. Second, context retention. And third, genre sensitivity. So these principles guided my translation in different literary forms such as song, poem, a short story, and a creative nonfiction or an essay, while incorporating the expert feedback that I received from my advisor. So my goal in revising these translations was not only to transform meaning from the source language to the target language, but also to ensure that the translated texts remain meaningful, natural, and culturally understandable to a wider audience. So now let's talk about my translation process of a widely known song called Multo by Cup of Joe. In terms of the fidelity to content, which refers to staying true to the original message of the text, one key challenge that I found was maintaining the syllable count, while still preserving the meaning of the lyrics. Because as we all know, songs have rhythms, and I had to balance literal meaning with structural constraints because it is a song. And the expert feedback emphasized the importance of staying true to the content, which ensures that the meaning and cultural environment of the source text remain recognizable in the translation. So, in the translated lyrics of Multo, I titled it as Haunted, because it possesses the context of being reminded of something that has already passed, but still occurring to you, such as the feeling of longing that keeps haunting you. So that is the concept of Multo. And as the wording changes slightly to match the rhythm, the core of the song must remain intact. That is one of the things that I ensured while translating the song. Cannot break free from this prison. Your shadow always comes to see me. Through the dark, I tasted poison. Don't even know how much I've taken. And one day I stopped believing, but my mind keeps on chasing. Pull me up, do not leave me. I'm always haunted by the presence of you, so let my soul go. I'm not a singer. For the second one, we have the poem. It is a piece written by Jules Yuan Roldan called Divisoria. And for this translation process, I really had no further problems in terms of the fidelity to content and genre sensitivity. However, this expert suggested, or my advisor suggested, focusing more on the context and toning down certain wordings may do a good thing for my translation, as the emotional tone would remain clear and natural in English. But the meaning of it is too deep that my interpretation manifested in the poem instead of just translating it the way it should be. So, as part of my revisions, I toned down some of the wordings, changed some terms from my initial draft, and somehow simplified it so that the hidden message in the poem remains hidden in the translated version, so that the readers will still be able to think about its real meaning. So take a look at this one. From my initial draft, the second line goes, the baggage of fear on the street curb. But on my final draft, I changed it to the baggage of worry, because the word fear is too extreme to shift or to translate pangamba into that. So that I kind of tone it down from fear to worry, so that it will match the meaning and the cultural equivalence of it from the Filipino into the English one. Another thing here is the bigwigs. It is too somehow colloquial and or somehow inappropriate term for the word puwersa. That's why from my initial draft, I kind of switched it back to or tone it down, simplified it into the term forces. So, as you can see from this initial draft and the final version of the translated poem, I kind of only changed the extreme words into the simplified ones in order to match the intensity of the poem from the source material to the target language. For the third one, we have the story called Kuwatro Siyentos by Multo. And fidelity was also evaluated through accuracy and lexical equivalence. However, the feedback noted that my word choices were generally good. However, I needed to work with my slang and work-related terms because I kind of relied too heavily on dictionary meanings or equivalents. And because the story involves in sex works, emotional nuance and social context are essential. I also learned to pay closer attention to collocations and imagery, since translation should evoke some sensory impressions and not just about literal definitions. So while the main ideas were preserved, some parts sounded too robotic or mechanical, which somehow weakened the narrative impact of the translated version on my initial draft. And the feedback recommended using discourse mapping, proper conjunctions, and smoother transitions to make the translation more cohesive. And some idioms in Filipino, such as ilaw ng tahanan, for us it means the mother of the family, should not be translated as light of the home, but instead interpreted as referring to the person itself or to baby itself. And preserving these idioms requires dynamic equivalence, where the focus is on conveying cultural meaning rather than the literal words. That's why I also went for sense instead of the word-for-word translation. And in terms of genre sensitivity, which means adapting translation strategies depending on the literary form, each genre has unique stylistic expectations. For instance, it requires emotional depth and narrative flow, while my translation had a basic syntactic structure, and it followed the Filipino sentence patterns too closely, making the English sound unnatural or forced. And the feedback also pointed out issues with tense consistency, dialogue flow, and word relationships, which is not good, because to improve this, I applied a functional equivalence, allowing the translation to capture the same emotional tone as the original, rather than just simplifying it. Lastly, the fourth one, the essay. In translating this creative non-fiction text, entitled Mga Ugat, Panghihilot at Pananambal by Denmark B. Soko, the goal was to maintain cultural essence while making the text accessible to a wider audience. So terms such as Ugat, Hilot, Mananambal, Panunukho, and Pabuot required careful explanation because they contain a deeper cultural meaning. For example, the word Pabuot in Visaya, if I'm not mistaken, it refers not only to the human mind, but also to a spiritual or moral awareness, which cannot be directly translated into a single English language word because its meaning goes beyond that. And in cases like this, the expert suggested using footnotes if the concept cannot be fully explained within the text itself. However, in my case, I used open and close parentheses. So some sentences focused more on aligning Filipino sentence structures with natural English syntax and using more active voice than the passive voice structure. Meanwhile, idiomatic expressions should be translated in ways that English readers can still understand while still preserving the cultural identity of the original text. Ultimately, the goal of the translation should not only to preserve the meaning, but to also introduce the Filipino and Visayan culture perspectives to the Western readers because it is actually rich in the text or in the essay Mga Ugat, Panghihilot at Pananambal. And through this translation, I really tried my best to make it to make the Western readers understand traditions of the Filipino, the concepts and the values embedded in the source text. So in conclusion, the expert feedback helped me refine my translation process by emphasizing fidelity, context retention, and genre sensitivity through careful considerations such as improving emotional depth and refining syntactic flow, preserving cultural nuances, making the translation more communicative and accurate to the original text. I aim to produce translations that are culturally respectful and engaging for global readers. And I hope you learned something new from me today. And as I forgot to mention earlier, I am Micaela, and see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye!